Hi everyone, and welcome to my latest video, which as you can see is all about the Formula 1 team Haas, and it concerns a bit of fallout, shall we say, from the Australian Grand Prix at the weekend. Now, for those of you who don't know, the controversy is based on the idea that the 2018 Haas car is virtually a copy of the 2017 Ferrari car, and that would be the reason behind the difference in performance between the Haas 2017 car and the Haas 2018 car. Haas really did excel themselves in Australia. They qualified 6th and 7th. They were on course to perhaps finish 4th and 5th, which would have been the best result teams had so far since it started in 2016. And then the wheels almost quite literally came off with some problems in the pit stops, putting out both their drivers. But up until that point, Haas were going really, really well, and this caught the attention of some of their rival teams and also some of the drivers as well. Fernando Alonso of McLaren was particularly outspoken in his view that Haas were perhaps bending the rules a bit too far, and Christian Horner, the team principal of Red Bull, also voiced some concerns. Now, it's worth pointing out here that nothing that Haas have done is actually against the rules. The FIA have actually double checked, as they do with all the teams, the legality of the car, and they cleared the car to race in Australia. It is a very close relationship between Haas and Ferrari. As a matter of fact, Haas get virtually everything that they need for their car from Ferrari, within the boundaries of the rules, of course. They have an arrangement to purchase most of the parts of their car, but it's all within the letter of the law. Some people might say that in this case the letter of the law is not the same thing as the spirit of the law. Perhaps it's not. But nonetheless, unless there is actually a cast iron case to make against Haas, people either need to put up or shut up. They either need to provide proof that the car is illegal, that it is a copy of the 2017 Ferrari car, or they need to move on. As it happens, the 2018 Haas car, because it's actually using some of the parts for the 2018 Ferrari car, is a different length to the 2017 Ferrari car. It has to be. So straight away, there are some fundamental differences because Ferrari have fundamentally changed their car for this year. So it's not a copy, really, in my view. And at the end of the day, and we can discuss, the spirit of the law all day long, the car does meet the rules. It does qualify to race, and this isn't me saying this is the FIA saying this. The people who are paid the money to make these decisions are saying this. The people with the experience of studying the cars are the ones saying this. So whether it's perhaps a bit unfair on other teams with smaller budgets, who knows, perhaps it is unfair. But there's not a great deal that anyone can do about it. Haas haven't broken any rules until such time that they do. That's that. But that being said, of course, other teams can, temporarily at least, breathe a sigh of relief because Haas, in the end, despite being on course to get a great points haul in Australia, managed to score no points as a result of the aforementioned pit stop problems. On both cases, the rear left tyre on Magnussen's car and I believe the front left tyre on Grosjean's car were not fitted back on correctly. They were on, but they weren't on properly. So the wheels weren't going to come off necessarily as such, although if they carried on going, perhaps they would have done. But in this instance, it was enough to force both cars out of the race. Now, this must be absolutely devastating for the members of the pit crew who made those mistakes. Mistakes do happen, and we've seen it in other teams before. Red Bull in particular had a particularly spectacular incident in 2013 where a wheel came off Mark Webber's car and actually hit someone. So even the most experienced teams and pit crews can make mistakes. But nonetheless, it's not going to change the feeling and the mood for the pit crew guys. It's worth noting that Grosjean actually went off and consoled the guy who'd made the mistake on his car. So it goes to show there's a great, strong team spirit there. At the end of the day, they need to bounce back hard, and just they need to have a look at what happened and practice and get back into the saddle as soon as they can. And fingers crossed. I rather like Haas. I rather like them as a team, and I hope they do actually have a reasonably good season. So I hope they can overcome these issues and they won't allow something like that, of all things, to cost them points again in the future. So the other issue, if you like, or controversy, or whatever you will, from the Australian Grand Prix was how Vettel came to win the race, which was largely down to an error from the Mercedes garage. They misjudged their timings in respect of the virtual safety car, and before you know it, Vettel's actually emerging from the pits ahead of Hamilton, and Hamilton, you could say, was quite rightly a bit miffed. After all, he'd been managing his race, managing his tyres, managing his engine. He was not exactly streaking away from the Ferraris, but he was in front and was looking fairly cosy, shall we say. And then all of a sudden, through no fault of his own, that victory has been snatched away from him. And I think for any driver, really, that's going to be a source of immense frustration when you've done nothing wrong, when it's not a mistake of your own, when it's someone else's error, and it costs you a win. And worse, it hands a win to the guy most likely to threaten you for the title that year. You're going to be a bit annoyed, I think. That being said, Hamilton did kind of seem to make the best of it, but knowing what I know of Lewis Hamilton from what I've seen over the years, I think he would have been stewing about this one quite a lot in the past few days, and he'll be very, very keen now to get back into the car in a couple of weeks' time and go again and put to bed what happened in Australia. He'll be determined to sort of prove, actually, we are the better team, I am the better driver. Let's go out there and let's win the next race and stamp our authority on the season, because that's what the first race is about in some respects. It's about leaving markers, and in the end, it's Ferrari that left the bigger of the markers. It could also be argued that Hamilton was hindered by the absence of Valtteri Bottas alongside him in the other Mercedes. Bottas crashed in qualifying, kind of ruined his race before it even started. And that's not good for someone who is actually trying to win a new contract for next year. There are a number of drivers who are out of contract at the end of this season, and they will all have an eye on that Mercedes drive. Because after all, Mercedes have been the best team on the grid for the past 4 years. There's no denying that. So therefore, everyone's going to want to drive for them. And Mercedes will be keeping an eye on who's going to be available as well. They might be thinking to themselves, well, can we replace Bottas with someone that's going to be more competitive? So Bottas needs to have a good season, and the first race of the season hasn't gone very well for him. That crash in qualifying gave him a penalty, which put him down to 15th on the grid, and he had a somewhat laboured race to end up finishing 8th, and 8th was only really by virtue of the problems for Haas. So not a great race for him really overall, and he'll just be desperate to sort of pick things up for Bahrain in a couple of weeks' time. Good luck to him, of course. I think Bottas is quite a talented driver. He is quite a composed guy usually, but he hasn't really shown that he can push Hamilton or that he can mix up with the title contenders. So if he's going to stay at Mercedes beyond this season, he's got to start showing that he can either be a very dependable number 2 driver, or he can be someone that's actually going to fight for the title and win the team lots of points that way. Time will tell. I mean, maybe Bottas will improve. I think he's capable of it, certainly. But thus far, I don't think he's going to improve enough to threaten Hamilton for the title. He's only going to improve enough to be a dependable number 2 driver. Beyond that, there's not much to say really about Australia. It's done and dusted. There were some good points scored for the Renault-powered cars. We saw Red Bull do reasonably well in the end. Perhaps they didn't show their true form here. We also saw McLaren and Renault get both their cars into the points. Particularly important for McLaren, of course, given the issues they had with their Honda engines, that they've switched over to Renault and have had a double points finish on the first race, which will be massively encouraging from their point of view. So they'll be hoping to continue that. Apart from that, it's really just the case now of roll on Bahrain in a couple of weeks' time. A very different dynamic, and I'll be doing a preview of that race as well, so keep an eye out for that. If you want to, you can check out some of the things I've had to say about Formula One on my website, www.meerkatmusings.co.uk, and there's a discussion board on there as well, so feel free to comment there or comment on the video. If you've got any thoughts about Formula One, any thoughts about the race, anything about what's going on with Haas, of course, let me know, and we'll take it from there. Thanks for watching.